Okay, so we'll call this work session to order. The first item on the agenda is a presentation from our Carlton Public Safety Police Department, and it's all yours, Kevin.
All right, so thank you, Mayor and Council, and the citizens of Carlton and surrounding area. So we're glad that we've had this opportunity to bring forward what we've done over the last 10 years as a department. I know prior to that, there's been a lot of change from what the department used to be to what it is now. When I came here, I wanted to set a strong foundation. I think before I really get too far into it, I'll let the officers introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves so that you guys are kind of aware of what their background and what they bring and what Carlton means to them. So I'll start with Senior Officer Jake Blair.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Council. So I'm a Senior Officer Jake Blair, and prior to working in police, I worked at Yamhill County Juvenile Detention for about 7 years, and I also worked for Linfield College Security for several years, kind of building some experience to go towards a law enforcement career. So I've been here for 7 years, and I am a firearms instructor, taser instructor, less lethal instructor. I just like everyone else in the department, we do a little bit of everything, patrol, investigations, training coordination, all of that. Some of my hobbies are music. I've been a professional musician since I was about 14 years old. And I also really enjoy photography in my free time. And I love working for the city of Carlton. It's a great community. It's tight knit, and everyone's very friendly, supportive. It has that small town vibe, and it's just a real pleasure to work here. I think that the partnership between the community and the police department is just kind of unparalleled. We work very well together as a team. So that's me. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about day-to-day operations and what I don't know if average is the right word to use, but what an average day on patrol would look like. So we do a lot. There are a lot of different things that we do in addition to just traffic stops and parking enforcement, city code enforcement. We will run entire investigations from start to finish, rather than in a larger department taking an initial report and then handing it off to a detective. We have the ability to see a case start to finish, which provides a lot of great experience. Some of the other things that we monitor, mental health issues in the community. We really try to kind of take a holistic approach to dealing with ongoing situations. Think creatively, use a community policing model. We're all about community policing. So really getting to know the community and establishing relationships makes a huge difference in our efficiency and how well we can do our jobs. There's neighborhood disputes that can go on for years, and they can be particularly taxing. But there's several training programs, training new recruits and reserve officers. We have a vacation check program where if a household is leaving for any period of time, they can let the department know, and we'll periodically check their house for them, make sure that nothing's disturbed, no doors or windows are broken open or anything like that.
With that said, we did have one house that we did a vacation check on, and you want to kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah. There was one house in particular that I was doing a check. Of course, the people who lived there were gone. They wouldn't be back for several days. And front of the house looked great. Everything seems okay. And I went to the back of the house and checked the back door. And I tried the back sliding door and it opened a little bit. So it turned out after it was all said and done, we got in contact with the homeowner, and she said, well, there should be a post that doesn't let the door open all the way. And sure enough, I tried opening it a little more and it stopped and no one would be able to get in. But I contacted her and called for some backup because I wasn't sure if someone was inside actually breaking into the house. But if that had been the case, we were there, ready to respond. And I think it's a great program. It's really nice for people to have that peace of mind when they're out. We get DHS cross reports often. They can range from something of a criminal nature just to something that is of concern to DHS. Regardless of what the context is of the DHS cross report, we will go out to the home and meet the family. One, to see what's going on at the house and determine the circumstances that caused the cross report, but also just to keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on in the community. And it's a great way to do that. We are an accredited agency, so that takes a lot of work in record keeping and making sure that all the boxes are checked for reports, and just everything we do, we hold ourselves to a very high standard, and accreditation in part just provides kind of some basic guidelines to meet that or exceed that standard. As far as training, we train in some of the subjects are firearms, de-escalation, less lethal devices, defensive tactics, emergency vehicle operations, DUII investigations. We check in on victims of any crimes and keep in close contact to make sure that they're getting the resources that they need. And just our general follow through, not only with victims, but just in any problems that may come up in the community. We just don't set things aside and hope that it will get better. We take a very proactive approach and try to solve problems before they build into something more. And so, yeah, we're definitely more proactive than reactive, definitely. So as far as community policing goes, basically what that term means to me is that rather than the police department working on its own to enforce laws independent of the community policing is a team effort between the police department and the community. And it truly does take that partnership to effectively solve problems and enhance safety for the long term. And luckily, the community and our department, I feel, are very close and work very well together to enhance overall safety and livability in the community. So.
Officer Jordan. All right. I'm Officer Tim Jordan. I've been working with Carlton Police Department since the end of 2016. But before that, I was a reserve officer from about 2015 on, and a volunteer before that, somewhere in 2015. I can't quite remember. So for about 6 years. So I started volunteering just in an administrative role, then moved to reserve, and then finally pestered them enough to hire me full-time.
We got our money's worth.
Yeah,
Free.
I had to twist some arms. I guess where my law enforcement career started was when I was 17. I joined a police cadet program for Salem Police Department. Did that for a couple of years and then ended up doing graffiti abatement, which is kind of tracking graffiti throughout Salem. And we also helped the gang team with information as we tracked graffiti. So that was kind of cool. And then there was a period of time in between there where my wife was going to school, so I was just working, not in a law enforcement capacity. I work for an aviation museum. I'm sure you all can probably guess which one that is, in the IMAX theater. So I ran the theater for them for almost 10 years. Hobbies, there's a lot of them. Pretty much anything outdoors. I like camping, backpacking, hiking. I'm married. I've been married for the last 10, 11 years now. So we do that together. We have 2 daughters under 2, so they keep us busy. And then I think my favorite pastime is scuba diving. I've done that for 15 years now. So all up in the Northwest, Washington and Oregon. What drew me to this department, I kind of got, without knowing it, a little burnt out at Salem PD. Nothing against the agency, it's a bigger city. When I came here, I was trying to get my toes back in the water, so to say. And what I noticed was how close the community and the police department were intertwined. The biggest part for me was when I started writing along with these guys. People would wave with all 5 fingers, which was completely different than Salem. And it was like, and so for me, that was aside from them, that was a big component. And like, I think I want to stay here and actually do this, because you can make a bigger impact when, I think you can make a bigger impact when the community and the police are working together, because we are part of the community. So, and I think when there's that separation, a lot gets lost in that. So, yeah, so I pestered them enough to hire me, and it's been great ever since. So that's a little bit about me. Officer Blair kind of touched on it when he was talking about all the different things that we do, community policing being one of those. And I would say it's my favorite to talk to people about. A lot of agencies, big or small, do a lot of what they would call community policing. I think we raise the bar considerably especially for the size of our agency. But the amount of involvement we have is pretty staggering. I'll start with the biggest thing that we do is National Night Out. The chief usually does a great job telling everybody, so I'm gonna butcher it here, but it's usually the first Tuesday of every August, without COVID being a factor. So it's been 2 years, I think we've missed out on it, this year and last year. But it's put on by us, but it takes the community involvement. So we have the National Guard, we have private donators, businesses donating food, time, energy to cook the food. It's usually themed. So I think, I gotta remember 2 years back, but we had a Native American theme, we had an island theme, we had a like South American, Latino theme. Celtic, yeah, that's right, Irish, Scottish, Celtic. And so there's a theme, but the bones of it is that the community gets to come into the upper park. It doesn't cost anybody anything, and they can eat. We have live music, and usually Jade and the chief are playing in their band, along with other bands we get to donate their time and eat, have fun, climb rock walls, do bouncy house slides. I mean, you name it. We literally take the whole upper park, parts of Grant Street, Main Street. I mean, it's still open, but we need crowd control essentially, and then all the way up Cooch, almost to Monroe, we have that whole street shut down with a bunch of activities for kids and adults. It's pretty cool.
Just an opportunity for an all-inclusive event that everybody can come to and enjoy without cost to anybody.
Yeah.
And it's, when we do these different themes, it's so that we can recognize the different races and cultures that we deal with. And so that we, again, want to emphasize that we're very inclusive of our community and all of the members that make up our community. And so by recognizing them by their culture is really a big thing, I think, which kind of also, because we usually bring somebody that has information regarding that culture that, you know, also shares that with the rest of the community that may not know about that culture, so.
It's a great opportunity for the community to meet us and for us to meet everybody, because I mean, just like any other police agency we deal with, generally on a day-to-day basis, a very small percentage of the population. But with that being said, a lot of calls that I go on, there's times where kids are saying, hey, I met you at National Night Out, you're Jordan, you're, you know, whatever it is. So it's a great opportunity to kind of lay that foundation where we know one another, so there's trust already built, especially in the situations we deal with where they have a uniform coming into their house because something happened. It's a lot of those barriers are already broken down and that trust is already built. And that's National Night Out is one of those times where pretty much the whole city comes. And so it's a great opportunity to build those relationships. So that's probably the biggest one. We have Holiday Patrol, which is always one of my favorites. For the last few years, we got an awesome Santa. Like, he looks like Santa. He's got his own suit and everything. He'll ride in the patrol car. It's usually with me. So I get to drive Santa around. We usually have at least one of the other guys, if not all of us. And we'll go from house to house, just kind of throughout the neighborhood. Anytime we see kids or people playing outside, usually with new Christmas toys, we'll stop. They get to see Santa, hand out candy, hand out bears, just make connections with people, just without having kind of the formal setting of like National Night Out where, you know, it's on the calendar and everyone's kind of invited. And we'll just spend the whole morning, sometimes into the afternoon, just driving around town looking for people to show Santa to and get pictures of. And so that's a very neat event that we started. And we've probably been doing that, what, 4 years now? Just or more.
Since I've been here, so 9 years.
Oh, really?
A little over, yeah,
Oh,
9 years
okay.
going on.
Okay. So next is Project Impact. Those have been just with COVID, we haven't been able to do a lot, but essentially it's a educational type program where the department will put together a presentation on a certain topic like domestic violence. We've done tools of the trade, so that's all the stuff we have, amongst other things. And it's just a topic for people to come. You okay? All right. It's a time for people to come. We do a presentation. They get to learn a little bit about police work in general, but specifically how we do police work here. So like for the tools of the trade, they get to see all the equipment we carry, the cars, what's in them, radar guns, shotguns, pistols, tasers, all of that. They actually get to see them hands-on and feel the equipment. But then we get to talk about our use of force policies and procedures, our daily operating procedures, how we do a traffic stop, the things that we're looking at, the things that a lot of people maybe don't see when they drive by and we're on a traffic stop, all the things that are going on. So we did another one that was on domestic violence, which was very impactful because we had people in the community come forward after and make reports of certain behaviors. So, and I'll try to speed up because we got a lot, but there's coffee with the chief. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's coffee with him, which I get to do almost every day anyway, but so I don't know what the big deal is. But they are able to sit down and have coffee with him and kind of bring their concerns and questions to him and have kind of a one-on-one time. We have Shop with a Cop that's in McMinnville PD, and the sheriff's office and local agencies go to Walmart and shop with underprivileged kids or kids that their parents have been through, for lack of a better term, in the system. And so their dealings with police have been maybe not in the best light in their history. So to be able to go shopping for Christmas toys with us is a neat opportunity. And I think we get more out of it than they do because because we get to go shopping with kids, and it's great to see these kids that don't have anything shopping for their brothers and sisters and family. So always a great thing to do around the holidays. We do birthday patrol if we find out it's somebody's birthday. We usually do a birthday patrol where we go over. They will sing happy birthday. I kind of lip sync it. I'm not very musically inclined, but we'll usually give them a little evidence bag full of goodies and stuff, and write up a little birthday warrant. It's fun. There was movie night. I don't think it's been a little while since, just with everything happening, but open gym, same kind of concept of having kids come shoot hoops with us and just a time to bond in that type of environment. Child ID Day, parents could bring their kids, we would do the DNA swab and test, and then that all gets put into a cool little packet and sent back with the parents. God forbid something happens to the kid, they have an easy to grab source of DNA and fingerprints, stuff like that. Foot patrol, I'm sure you've seen us from time to time. We'll be walking down Main Street and on foot, and we'll actually go throughout the whole city. But generally we try to at least hit Main Street on foot, and that it takes the car away, so we're able to break that barrier down. People feel more at ease coming up and talking to us. So we have bicycle patrol, same concept, just on a bicycle, we can get around a little quicker. Lunch pail program at the school, where we go and we eat lunch with the kids, which is pretty neat. And on top of that, we have the SRO program, which is School Resource Officer. So when school is in session, again, COVID kind of threw everything out, but once we're back to somewhat normal, we'll go on a daily basis and walk through the school and just build those relationships with the kids. It also, on the other side of that, while we're building relationships with the kids, it also is a deterrent for active threats like school shootings and things of that nature. So kind of kills two birds with one stone. We have tours of the PD, granted when COVID wasn't an issue, and ride-alongs as well. That was a component. Officer Blair already touched on the vacation checks. We have Carlton Crush, and just because I'm pressed on time, I'll kind of wrap things up. But we have Carlton Crush, which is a program we're a part of, the half marathon, which always ends in Carlton, Christmas tree lighting at Christmas time. They always pull out the guitars and jam some Christmas carols. Fun Days event. Grad night parade from Yamhill. We're part of the parade that comes into Carlton, and they throw water balloons and stuff at us. I think they're dead in our cars, but that's always a great event that we do. And things like Flavors of Carlton and Chalk Walk I'll just kind of round it out with that.
Officer Steves.
I'm Officer Micah Steves. I'm the newest addition to the police department. I started as a reserve in 2019, and then got hired last year around September. From my history, I started in the aquatic field as a lifeguard in 2015, and have been there and was in the aquatic field until last year. And I helped teach new lifeguards and help save people and all that stuff. But I also taught kids how to swim. I got to know their families and just spent time being proactive as a lifeguard. And I ended up working for the Carlton pool, which I didn't know too much about at the time. And as I slowly started to get to know the kiddos and their families and the community itself, I started to realize that I like this great little town. And I started to see like what the police department did and the impact that they had, and me not knowing too much about the police, but knowing that I enjoy helping people and enjoyed the community. I had a little talk with Chief Martinez and kind of asked him what it was all about, and slowly started getting involved with volunteering and becoming a reserve and going through the Reserve Academy, and eventually getting hired full time. And I just got back from the academy in February. And essentially, I saw that we're really proactive, like for the heat, when the heat wave that came by, we ended up actually, prior to any of that, I made a list of citizens that are more vulnerable to heat illness and heat stroke and things like that, which coming from a pool background, pretty knowledgeable in. And we ended up visiting 20 different families and doing proactive welfare checks on them. And the citizens that we talked to and contacted, they loved it. They encouraged us to keep looking and finding more people that may need help. We made sure that they had water, they had plans to keep cool, made sure that they had things in place, made sure they had air conditioning. And then we also informed them about the cooling center that the city of Carlton and the American Legion were hosting at the American Legion. Let them know that they have AC there, water, movies, and things like that. And we talked about, just current things. A lot of people that were more susceptible, they were at home and they were kind of just staying at home on their own. So even just that time to getting to talk to them, getting to talk to someone else, I mean, that made their day. And then we asked them, how can we help you more? Do you know anyone that needs help that would benefit from a welfare check? Anyone that could benefit from the cooling center? And just kind of made sure everything was good. And then also with that, we were patrolling around the city. We were handing out water bottles in our coolers that we keep in our car, giving water to children, to adults, anyone that looked like they may need it. I ended up making a traffic stop at a criminal level, and the guy that I pulled over, he seemed to be having a harder time with the heat, and we ended up providing a water bottle for the traffic stop and then another water bottle for the trip home. He was really happy about that. We did extra patrols at the lower park where the river is and where the water is. Coming from a lifeguard standpoint, I see people at the bottom of the pool, either in theory or actually. And I love to be able to go to the river and know that from my training experience of being a lifeguard, that I can be proactive and make sure that we don't have anything where we need to make a rescue or be there if we need to. Make sure that everyone's staying safe and make sure everyone knows about all the resources that we can provide for them. And it was just really nice to see how proactive we are and know the people in the community personally and be able to just say, hey, Joe, how's it going? How's the family? How are your kids? And just seeing everything, as Officer Jordan mentioned, I mean, people are waving to you. When you're going through McMinnville, people don't wave to you. When you're going through Newburgh, they don't really wave to you. But the community loves us and trusts us, and it's quite the connection.
Thank you. So I'm Chief Kevin Martinez, who knows here. Just for those that don't, I've been in law enforcement for over 30 years. Started out in Eugene as an explorer and then a reserve. And then I started my full-time career in Lebanon, was there for 23 years, experienced being a canine handler, a narcotics canine handler, worked in detectives, undercover work, was a sergeant, the sergeant of detectives and the sergeant of patrol. And then in 2012, I was hired by the city of Carlton. And throughout my whole career, I've always been community policing oriented. So everything I've done has been an engagement with the community. I got to learn a lot of things in watching the officers and the organization within Eugene and what they offered and what they had. And I never anticipated being in a smaller city as Lebanon. And when I was in Lebanon, I was really engaged in a number of different community functions, which really enhanced that relationship between the police department and the citizens. And so when I came here, I really had developed a good base of community policing concepts and philosophies. And so at that time, the city council unanimously had passed a public policing policy in 2012, just before I got here. And so to keep in line with what they had passed, and that'll be in your department report. And if you haven't had a chance to look at this 10-year report, it's from 2010 to 2020. This does not encapsulate everything that's happened over those 10 years, but it certainly captures a significant concept of what has transpired over the 10 years and the progression of what we've done as a police department over the 10 years in enhancing our public policing philosophy. Everything we do is not tunnel visioned into a response to one incident. It's with the end result being multiple results. So dealing with the situation itself, is it going to be a long-term resolution? The public policing component of it, you know, everybody that's involved in that, not necessarily the victim, but witnesses and uninvolved parties that may have experienced that. All that we do is all encompassing to be long-lasting, a long-lasting resolution or a long-lasting outcome that betters our community as a whole. So when I came here, there was an interim chief and there was one officer, and there was really not a foundation that had been set. And I wanted a solid foundation because I wanted us to be, it doesn't matter whether you're a small agency or a large agency, you still have the responsibility and obligation as a law enforcement agency to meet best practices, whether they're, the bottom line is across the board, these best practices are identified so that we collectively as a law enforcement entity across the world use that to make us the best that we can be, to bring out the community policing concepts, to minimize liability. And so to set that in place, I knew I wanted to bring an accredited agency into our department to provide that professional standard and best practices to meet or exceed. We've been recognized throughout the state and beyond as a small agency of less than 5 officers, which I think we still are the only agency that is accredited with less than 5. You've got Newburgh, that's an accredited agency, McMinnville is an accredited agency, the Sheriff's Office is an accredited agency. The reason these agencies are accredited is because it holds us to a standard. We are transparent, we hold ourselves accountable. And ultimately, if we're an accredited agency, like you see hospitals accredited, there's a reason for that, and that is to keep liability to a minimal. So if you may not see an outright upfront cost savings or anything like that, but you will at the end of it, or in the long term, because you're not seeing the liability. We have a de-escalation formula that we've put in place, and it's time plus distance plus communication. And everything we do, from talking to a citizen to involved in a response, whatever that response might be, we implement those components of the formula so that we come out with a de-escalated situation. And we don't use that formula just for work-related issues. We use it in our personal lives as well, because we all have situations where we need to de-escalate. And so to understand that if you need to keep your distance, or the communication needs to change on how you're communicating, or taking the time, all those things, they help keep us out of trouble, and they help keep the city out of trouble. Another component that I wanted to add to how we protect the city and the officers, and as well as the community members, is the body cams. This is something that we started, I believe it was about 2014 that we implemented these body cams. And I'll tell you right now, they are beyond words how much they have been a benefit to us in people that have come forward with accusations about certain things, race-related or whatever the complaint might have been. We've been able to come out and show with the video footage that the circumstances were different than what were reported. We had a situation in town, and I know we've got cameras around town, where one of the officers was being basically accused of harassing a daughter of an individual. The officer had given the daughter a citation on one occasion for not stopping at a stop sign. And then the daughter ended up coming through town on a later date, and the officer was on a traffic stop on West Main. And the daughter had passed the officer. She'd come up to the stop sign at Yamhill and Main, and then turned left towards Yamhill. Well, right after she turned left, there was a police car immediately right behind her. And that person thought that the officer was following her, and again, continuing what they believed was a harassment type situation. So we viewed the camera, and it shows her turning. It shows the officer still on his traffic stop, and a Yamhill Police Department car headed eastbound, turning right behind her and following them to Yamhill. So those kind of things save us the question of, did it happen or did it not happen, by being able to in real time show these kind of things. So everything we do is to try to maintain the highest standard of preventing liability issues related to the city and the officers becoming put in a situation that otherwise they may have been put in a situation. The coverage that we have in the city, we've just recently obviously added the 4th position. We hope that we will see him cut loose here within a month or two. And with that, right now we run shifts from about 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Depending on different things that are going on, vacations or other reasons that might not allow us to stay until 12, whatever that might be. We alternate our shifts accordingly to what's going on in the city. If we've got a bunch of car prowls going on, then we adjust and we work night shifts, and we work as a team. And we have been able to, we've had a couple of significant car prowl criminal mischief situations that due to the experience and the knowledge of knowing the citizens and recognizing citizens, we were able to quickly identify the involved parties in those cases and make subsequent arrests and stop that activity. So when we come together, we had a search warrant that we served on a residence that was selling and using heroin and methamphetamine, and they had 3 children in the residence. And it was a really significant thing for us. These investigations take a lot of time. In addition to try to keep our head above water with dealing with all the other calls coming in and trying to keep a balance on everything else. But these things become the priority and come to the top of the list so that we can stop that activity. There was a lot of bad elements coming into our community. They were bringing guns, they were stealing from us. There was a lot of bad people that we definitely did not want in our community. And so we collectively put our resources towards that effort. We served a search warrant, and that residence is no longer a problem residence. People that were involved all moved on. We had another situation where Officer Blair worked a case. It was identity theft on social media. And in that particular case, somebody had taken the identity of an individual here in the city limits of Carlton and was basically soliciting for males to come to their residence and to engage in activity that was not the case. They basically used this person's identity, and we were getting people that were coming into our community that really had the propensity to cause, we could have been looking at kidnapping or sexual related charges and things like that. That would have been really something that would have been really a tragedy to have allowed or to have not taken the time to investigate that case. And we'd be looking at stuff that was, as a community, was very hurtful to us all collectively, because we all believe in taking care of our community holistically. So we were able to track that person down, arrest them, and bring that to a closure. And the victim in that case was absolutely, and the family was absolutely beyond words to express the effort that was put into that. So when we get a case, or a problematic situation or ongoing disputes, those things all take a lot of time. And so we try to keep, I'm telling you right now, you can't ask for a better group of guys that have a balance on how they do police work and how they integrate community policing into their community. We have the ability to do a lot of proactive stuff and prevention. And if you don't have those components, then you're chasing calls. All you're doing is reacting from call to call to call. And the other system we have in place is when I first got here, I remember a barking dog call complaint coming in, and there was nobody on duty. So a deputy from Sheridan had to come all the way over here to deal with a barking dog complaint that really we as the Carlton Police Department have the responsibility, because this is going to be an ongoing problem. And we want to work with all the parties involved to resolve that problem as soon as possible. And so I implemented a lot of systems that made us more accountable to our calls, a better finger on the pulse of our community. I am accessible 24/7. My phone is, if you notice on the sides of the City Hall and the police department, I've got my phone number on there. Everything that we have in place, from our voicemails to our desk phones, all go to our cell phones, and in particular go to me. And so if we don't have anybody on duty, then dispatch will forward. So this is when I talk about not on duty and them forwarding information to me, it's typically the non-emergency, the non-in-progress calls that you need immediate law enforcement response. So what in those cases, we all throughout Yamhill County pay taxes to the sheriff's office to cover in those circumstances where we don't have coverage. And so they're obligated to come and cover. And we have a relationship with the sheriff's office and we work collectively. We will always follow up on cases or calls that the sheriff's office comes into to cover us on. And again, these are cases that are in progress or emergency type calls. The rest of the stuff, I will give a call, say we don't have anybody on duty at the time, I'll give them a call, even if I'm on vacation. If I get that voicemail that's left or that email, I'll call them and take 5-10 minutes to talk to them, because it's important that they know that we're responsive to them in a timely manner. And I can over the phone put a plan in place with whoever the individual citizen is and the circumstances that they're dealing with. And we can have a temporary plan until the next officer's on duty. And I don't think you will find that in very many communities, the extent of that type of accessibility to not only the chief, but to us collectively. Because if the other night we had a attempted suicide situation, and we had just gone off duty, and I listened to the radio at home as well. So when they say you're never off duty, you're never off duty. So I heard it go down. I immediately called the officers in. They all came in. Of course, the county got there first because they were on duty. They got there, secured the scene. Our officers got there, conducted the investigation into what the situation was. We take great pride, great responsibility and ownership in what we have as a responsibility assigned to us by the council, by the community. And again, you won't see, I don't think you'll see a community, a small community, well, let alone a large community. You go to a large agency and you try to call in for a stolen vehicle, and you get an answering machine and you just leave a message and what the description of the car is and all that. And that doesn't happen here. We don't allow that to happen here because, again, we take ownership to everything that goes on. When I first started, the number of calls that the county had that would take in comparison to what Carlton would take, and again, remember, this is just me on having hired 2 new officers, was, this is the county, this is us, or out the county and outside agencies. Now it's like this because we have taken ownership of collectively 95% of what's going on in Carlton. We know our people, we are engaged with our people, we care, and we will go the extra mile to ensure the safety and the livability of this community. Before, apparently, officers would go to McMinnville for lunch or dinner, and you take an officer out of the city to go to McMinnville, they're out of here for at least an hour, hour and a half. Everything we do, from distribution of paperwork to lunches, is maximized to our presence in this community when we're on duty, because we can't afford to be out of this community when something happens, when an emergency goes down, when we truly have somebody on duty. There was a call in Amity where it took a lot of resources to go assist with that. We maintained the north end of the county. First and foremost, we were taking care of Carlton to make sure that we were still present for them. But then the county had a couple of calls that one was an alarm that went off. And so we are the only agency that had a law enforcement officer or officers on duty at that time. So our officers went to the alarm and ended up locating or finding out that it was truly a real alarm. Somebody had broken into the residence. And so it's, resource management, understanding when we need to go cover somebody, when we can go cover somebody, or if it's truly, is this just, we want to be part of helping people, because that's what we do. We always go to trouble no matter where the trouble is. And so to have the restraint to be able to understand that you have to manage where your resources are collectively around you. And when you don't have any other collective resources around you, what is your responsibility? It's not just Carlton. If we're the only law enforcement agency in this north end, it's our responsibility to step up and assist the county, assist Yamhill PD, assist whoever. We've gone over to Newburgh to help on various things. McMinnville for shooting cases. And so to understand when we can go and when we need to stay is critical. And these guys understand that law enforcement collectively is not about chasing tail lights. It's not about throwing people in jail. It's about a balance of everything that we have as a responsibility from, how long do we have till? Ricky, we're good? Oh, okay. So I've got a few questions that I'd like to answer real quick. I think I may have, I talked about the hours that we're on duty. So when Mike is cut loose, we will extend the hours from 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. So we don't have enough for a 24-hour, 24/7 police department. It would take about 3 more officers to get to that point. And of course, that you may suffer a little bit if there's somebody on maternity leave or vacations, depending on the circumstances with that coverage. But really, to me, 24/7, we would need 3 more officers. Let's see, I think I got that. So the facility that we're in right now, compared to what we had, we couldn't ask for anything better. We understand the structure of the building that we're in. We understand that the windows are not bullet resistant or bulletproof and that we're exposed. We couldn't be happier than the building that we're in with regards to things that are still issues within the building. From leaking roofs to, we've got one side of the HVAC system that's out right now. We don't have a shower for when the guys get involved in biohazard situations. And I'm not trying to, this has nothing to do with the new building. I'm just telling you that we could not, to bring everything under one roof for our operations is incredible. To be the proficiency and the efficiency and everything, for us to have that under one roof is incredible. So again, thank you guys for allowing us to get there. Thank you for the building, for the vehicles. That will make a huge difference. 115 degrees out there in the heat, our cars, we had to fight for shade. And of course, the construction was going on in 115 degrees, and you can imagine what the interior of a car is. It's going to melt it, our equipment that's expensive. And so we've got to protect that stuff so that we can ultimately protect you guys and the citizens. And again, it comes back to livability and the best law enforcement services that we can bring to Carlton. We hope we've met or exceeded that standard. Let's see. I know there was a question about speed limits and things like that. I'm not sure, but right now we've got issues with speed limit designations throughout the city. If you lower those, and I know yeah, I don't think we can do it, but we're going to even have more of a complaint-based system if you lower those. Those are in place collectively through every community, and it's a standard. And of course, when we do have a problematic situation, like we've had, a couple of particular intersections, and we put up our digital speed sign to kind of monitor. We put up cameras to monitor the intersection. We've done in-person patrols and enforcement. So we assess the totality of what's going on. We've made up some plaques that talk about coming to a complete stop, which still doesn't necessarily apply to everybody. But everything we do does make a difference. Everything we do does impact most people. And that's what we want. We want to gain more compliance so that we, again, keep our city safe. Let's see. So as far as the salary benefit package for the chief and the officers, we don't have current comparatives to that. So that's something that we can do research to see how we fare with regards to other agencies. But I don't have that information readily available at this time. Any other questions that I haven't covered?
I think you covered it.
That was speed presentation.
Well, you guys did great. That's a lot of information in 45 minutes, 40 minutes.
Yeah, these guys, and I'd like to take this opportunity to really say that these guys are the best of the best. I mean, I truly mean that.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Oh, we appreciate you. Been seeing you a lot in the park lately.
Yeah, no, it was July 4th was great. We were out handing popsicles out. Again, it comes back to that, when we're up in Carlton Crest and we're writing a report or we're monitoring traffic, we now have a monitor in our car that we've just placed that has the cameras on them that are around town. So again, it comes back, we don't tunnel vision into one thing, we multitask everything we do. So while we're typing or we're monitoring the traffic, we're watching the monitor. Is there something going on in the lower park? Is there something going on in the upper park where these key locations are? We want to get a camera on the front of the school so we can monitor that. We want to also be there physically, but when we can't be there, we want to be able to multitask. We can monitor these from our phones. I monitor from home again, 24/7. But there's a reason. It's because we are that vested in the safety of this community.
Mayor, may I say something?
May you say something? Madam, yes.
I've lived in over approximately half a dozen cities throughout my lifetime. And I've never experienced an interaction between the community and the police department like I've seen in the city of Carlton. Usually when you were interacting with the police department, you were having a bad day, even if it meant a minor bad day like speeding, but you were having a bad day. And to see people in this community actually go to our officers rather than shy away from them has actually been stunning to me, to see them waving with all 5 fingers and to actually see the officers engage and talk about families and how people are doing. To see that engagement's been wonderful. But to add another layer onto that with our historic microscopic lens on police right now, nationally, and to hear some of the major components of police reform, the accountability through accreditation that establishes the best practices, that is so rigorous that only about 3% of the departments nationally do that. And that's already here. The body cameras that are implemented, the training for response so that it's de-escalation, so it's not an over response. You already heard that that's already being implemented here. And one thing that I heard on the TV last week that was said best by a law professor was, it's not about policing, it's about culture. And it's about who you hire and what and how you ask them to do their jobs and how they engage with the community. And for the council to have the foresight to do the policy to optimize the positive contact and strengthen the working relationship between the community and the police, I just think is phenomenal. And that policy is on page 250 of your parting gift here. There will be a test later. But over and above, as you heard tonight, these individuals don't do these things because it's a policy or procedure on a piece of paper. It's who they are as individuals, and that's what they bring to this community. So I just wanted to comment about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. That was a good one. And I would definitely encourage, when are we gonna be able to do ride-alongs again comfortably? Because I really would like to encourage counselors to do this.
Yeah, we're really close to cutting Officer Steve loose, so I think once that happens, which is, like I said, a month or two out, then
You're gonna be
anybody's
comfortable
welcome to
doing
come on down. You do have to go through a background check. Minor detail.
It's not much. Well, I mean, it really, I don't mean to
Yeah, no,
belittle it,
it's
but
not
it's
as
not.
scary as it sounds.
Yeah.
Unless it is scary.
It's not a serious question. Yeah, but I mean, it's definitely worth doing. And
It really is. I think hands-on, you get to see really what transpires, and typically it's a 4-hour ride-along, and within that 4 hours, you can only imagine, the officers having that pace throughout their whole 10-hour day.
well, you get a sense of how long something takes,
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
see writing a ticket, which you
Yeah.
assume is gonna be, and I've always noticed when they were done writing my tickets that they would go and sit in the car for found out what they were doing
Yeah.
there. But, yeah, that's one of the, I think, things that's really good about doing that is seeing the variety of stuff that you can do each day and also, or each shift, and also how long it takes.
Yeah.
It's not just pop in and pop out. With that,
Should we let them get back to work?
we need to get
Thank you,
you guys
council.
back.
Thank you, citizens.
Thank you
very
Thanks,
much.
staff.
And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Reformatting now? Sure. Okay. Stay where you are, grandparents. I'm leaving.
Brenda, if you want, you can move over there next to Counselor Skipper, or you can wait till the regular meeting, whatever you're more comfortable.
We were just kind of making room for this.
All right, so we're gonna do a roll call for work session. Do I have Mayor Linda Watkins?
Yes.
All right, Council President Shirley Ward Mullen. Here. Councilor Skipper.
Here.
Councilor Guillermo Brandale.
Here.
Councilor Grant Erickson.
Here.
Councilor Jamie England. Here. And Councilor Kathy Meyer.
She was here.
She was.
I think she's there.
Gone. Shannon, are there any items on any of the remaining items that are critical to get through this evening?
No, we can pause them, and if we have time getting into the regular session, we can add them to the regular session agenda.
So I think we will adjourn the work session at this time. Gives us just a couple minutes to move into the regular session. I think so. I think it's our, I don't know if she's gonna, we have them at least through the. I think she means for us. Okay, yeah. Shannon, these were meant for us to take home or?
No, leave them here, please, and they'll be in front of you every meeting.
Okay.
This one. That one you can take off.
Yeah. Okay, so that's. It being 7 p.m., we will call the regular meeting of the City Council for July 6th to order. Roll call, please.
All right, so roll call for regular session. Mayor Linda Watkins.
Here.
Council President Shirley Ward Mullen. Here. Councilor Kevin Skipper.
Here.
Councilor Jeremy Brandale.
Here.
Councilor Grant Erickson.
Here.
Councilor Jamie England.
Here.
Councilor Kathy Maher.
Oh, she's here.
Oh, looks like we're having a technical difficulty,
Okay.
but all councilors are present and accounted for.
Thank you. Could you please stand, and Councilor Erickson is going to lead the Pledge of Allegiance today.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
If we have time permitting, I'd like to add the 3 work session items to the bottom of the agenda. I would like to talk about the Highway 47 update. It is, the letter sent is a little time sensitive.
Right, do you want to, so we'll just do that at the end? Okay. Added. Okay, ceremonies, appointments, or announcements? Do we have anything going on? No. All right, we're doing that. Which brings us to the citizen comments section. This section of the agenda allows members of the public to address the city council for items on and not on the agenda. Please speak to the mayor at the correct time. When invited by the mayor, members of the public should come forward and state their name and street address. Comments are typically limited to 3 minutes unless additional time is allowed by the mayor. So part A is for any citizen who wishes to address an item that is not on our current agenda. If you're on there, do your raise hand function, and Morgan will.
I do have a quick note to add as well.
Oh, right, yes, please do that.
So as we begin the meeting, participants are being muted by the host to reduce any audio feedback interference during the recorded meeting. Participants may only unmute themselves when called upon. Participants who unmute themselves and interject out of turn will be removed to reduce that audio interference. Participants' names must be displayed through Zoom as your true name or phone number, or removal will occur. If you wish to make a comment during the public comment section and have joined using a computer or mobile app, please use the raise hand function so that we can call upon you and see who wishes to speak. If you're not using your computer and you're listening to the meeting using your provided telephone number, you can hit *9 on your telephone keypad, and that will initiate the raise hand function. Once it's your turn to speak, you will be called upon, and then you can follow the rules stated by Mayor Watkins.
Are there any questions? Citizen comments?
It looks like no hands are raised at this time.
Okay. In that case, for items on the agenda, are there any questions or citizen comments? Okay, we will move on to number 7, the consent agenda, which are the meeting minutes for the City Council of June 6, accounts payable and finance reports. Is it-
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented in the packet.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion's carried. I wanted to make a real quick comment on the consent agenda, something that I don't know, most people, when you hear us talk about that, you hear us talk about the meeting minutes and accounts payable report, finance reports. If you folks are wondering what happens to the money that you pay in, on the consent agenda is several pages of financial accounting that give information about what checks have been written, what payments have been made for that month, and where they've gone to. It also has, let's see, what do we call that? Real quickly here. I bring this up because this question had been asked. So, it gives checks by date and payable, and it also does the budget and finance reports that shows you items in the budget, where they are, how much has come in that month, how much is going out that month, and how that comports with what we were expecting to come in on the budget. So yes, it's money and it's accounting, but it's really worth checking into if you haven't done that. All righty, ordinances, resolutions, discussions, and action items. That's number 8A. We are at the Ziply Fiber franchise agreement.
Mayor and Council, in front of you is a ordinance that allows for a franchise for the Ziply Fiber. That has been in discussions with the city attorney as well as Ziply's council. Would the city attorney like to comment on any of that?
Yes, this is essentially a additional internet and fiber provider that is seeking a franchise from the city to be able to provide service within the city, which would provide citizens with another possible company with which they could do business. The franchise agreement is modeled on the same franchise agreement you use for Astound and for Online Northwest. We currently have franchises with the city, so there is similar language. Because of the nature of Ziply's enterprise, they are regulated by the Public Utility Commissioner, and so they have to apply for approval of new entities should they sell their assets to a bigger company or a different company, and that happens fairly often in that industry. So they wanted a provision that in the event the Public Utility Commissioner approved the transaction as a responsible company to assume their obligations to the citizens of their system, that the city would treat that as an approval by the city and that would avoid a duplication of that approval process. I said that I thought that was something that the council would give favorable consideration to. The council, to my knowledge, has never denied a transfer of companies when they are absorbed by other companies. The staff at the Public Utility Commission are quite professional in terms of reviewing applicants in connection with their regulations. So that's the sum and substance. This is the same franchise agreement you've approved fundamentally 3 different times previously with that one minor change.
Well, is there any discussion? Questions?
I had a quick question about
Yes.
section on page 98, section 5E. Because I'm assuming that they're probably going to come in with overhead services and attach to existing pole lines. Or is that kind of, because I know we have plans to underground utilities in the future, and there's a section in there that says no more than, they're not required to place more than 800 feet of its facilities underground at any given.
That is consistent with all of your other franchises. So you have a kind of most favored nation clause in many of those franchises, which says you can't treat one franchisee different from another in that connection. Very few cities have that actually anymore. And it is, that dates from way back. The city is maintaining that provision. It does require companies to come in and pay the initial cost of undergrounding. They can, if they wish, apply to the PUC to have the cost of that undergrounding repaid by the ratepayers over a period of years, as opposed to applying to the city and getting direct payment. And that if that's approved by the PUC, then it's passed through rates over time. This limits it to say that you're not going to require them to do more undergrounding than $800 feet per year at their own expense. That is, the city would have to come in and subsidize or finance additional undergrounding over 800 feet if that's the case.
Thank you.
Now, the other thing is that to answer your question, yes, they are probably going to be undertaking pole attachment agreements. So because I don't think Ziply Fiber owns a single pole. The poles are typically here owned by PGE. So all the cable franchise companies have to get a pole attachment agreement with PGE, and PGE has an obligation to underground their lines if the city finds that to be in the public interest. PGE can undertake the same process of attempting to recoup that expense over time from the citizens, but that's just the nature of state law.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Any discussion?
I just wanted to clarify one thing, sorry, real quick. So it says the franchisee, so equal to 5% of the franchisee's gross revenue. So that's the services they provide in Carlton. The city gets 5% of that. Is that how I read
Not
that?
all of the services. State law defines telecommunications as exchange services. So that telephone exchange services does not include internet charges at this point. But you'll note that there's some highlighted language in the definition of gross revenues on page 1 that says that in the further event, the city shall be authorized by applicable state or federal law or by final binding judicial order to charge a franchise fee on franchise and franchisee gross revenue shall include revenue derived from the sale of internet services derived through the telecommunications network. And those revenues shall be considered received from exchange access service and shall be included in their gross revenues. So if in fact the legislature or the federal government or the federal district court rules that Carlton has the right to charge a franchise fee on telecommunications other than telephone exchange services, then this will allow that to happen automatically, as opposed to doing it at the end of the franchise term, which is 10 years. Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No more discussion? Call the question. Is there a motion to, with regard to this ordinance, to approve or reject? Somebody?
I make a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign ordinance number 2021-731, granting a franchise to Frontier Communications to conduct general telecommunications business and a right to use Carlton public rights of way within the city limits.
So
I'll
that in
second
effect
that.
is a motion to approve the first reading of the
Thank
ordinance.
you. Second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Ordinance number 2021-731, an ordinance granting Ripley Zipley Fiber a franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications network within the city of Carlton, Oregon.
Okay, we have a vote. We do have a vote. No, it's been moved and seconded, hasn't it? Moved and seconded. And Walt read the title. Yeah. So we need a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So this will come back to you at your next meeting for
Yeah,
second and final reading.
thank you all. Item B is the ecology services and rates.
At the last meeting, council asked for a number of scenarios to be looked at for yard debris as well as glass collection services. Since that time, we've had the landfill close, and Dave Larma is here to describe what the impact has been of that landfill closure. You will also have in your packet a request for an increase in services of a little less than 3%, and he is here to answer any questions about that.
Where he was. He's there,
Oh, no,
but
he's
he's
there.
muted.
I'm here. Thank you, Ms. Beauclair, Mayor Watkins. For the record, this is Dave Larmuth. I'm the rate analyst for Recology Western Oregon. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear now, yes.
Okay. So yeah, it's been a busy couple of days over at Recology. The first thing that I want to make sure we cover is the rate adjustment that's in front of you tonight is to cover the increase in the franchise fee the city would like Recology to pay to the city for the services that we provide under the franchise agreement. This was part of the new franchise agreement that we signed, and I think it became official in February of this year. But because there was already a rate adjustment at that time, we suggested that the rate adjustment and for the franchise fees be handled at your July meeting, which so far so good. There was also some talk at that time about having some additional services included that either city staff provide now or that Recology provides now at no charge to the city. That would have been made a larger rate adjustment for that to happen. So apparently y'all have had some conversations about that and decided not to do that part at this time. So we submitted a revised proposal, which just covers the change in the franchise fee. The old rate was 3% with some things, certain revenues excluded, which really no longer apply because the franchise agreement has been updated. So the new percentage is 5%. And again, we pay that to the city, that we pay those fees to the city on the work that we perform within the city limits of Carlton. So that is part one. Should we, maybe I should stop and see if you have any questions or about that part, because that's definitely the thing we're doing for sure tonight.
Do we have any questions?
Dave, I have a question for you. So is this rate increase, this is specific to the closure of Riverbend landfill? Is that why we're seeing this?
It is not. This was part of the new agreement that was presented to the city in November, and I think officially signed and finalized in February. You had a rather aged franchise agreement that didn't have a lot of the features of the agreements we had in other jurisdictions. So one of the things that the city wanted at that time was to increase the franchise fee from 3% to 5%, and the change in the franchise agreement removed the exclusions that had gone along with it. So this is just about the franchise fee only.
And the exclusions that were now being put back in are the options to get glass and yard debris.
No, ma'am, that's a separate topic entirely. There were some exclusions to what revenue was included for the purposes of paying franchise fees under the old system. There were, I think there was a calculation of rent for the number of front load containers that were in service, for the number of carts that were in service. There were certain types of hauls that were excluded from the franchise fees. Demolition hauls, I believe, were part of that. So that meant that we were paying 3%, but not on all of the revenue. So under the new agreement, we pay 5% on all of the revenue without any exclusions. So that's the exclusions part.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So because we're not excluding any revenue, that means essentially the 2.91% is covering the whole increase. Is that why it's 2.91 instead of 2% that we increase because of the exclusion?
That's correct.
Should we move on to part two?
Sure. So I guess based on, if we're following my letter from June 8th, that is part two. Part one, we are proposing to skip. So there are two rates on page 4 of the rate sheet. They're not all the way at the top, but they are under the second section on page 4, the disposal fees for demolition waste and for garbage. There was a 1.6% increase in that ton rate based on the annual CPI adjustment that Riverbend applies to their public gate rate. And as we can talk about, that we're no longer taking garbage to Riverbend. So that rate we're asking you to not adopt, and we won't be making that change at this time. Once we have a better idea of what the change in our costs are related to what we're doing with landfill, again, we can get into more of all of that. But so that was part one of the letter, was requesting that change in the ton rate. So we won't be making that change. But the other, but part two, sorry, I've got too many screens open here, but so we're requesting that you skip part one of my June 8th letter and that you approve part two, which is the increase in the franchise fees.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move that we authorize Recology's request for a rate adjustment effective August 1st, 2021. Let's see. Adjustment would be 2.91% rate adjustment. Do I need to add anything more that's in this section too?
No, motion to approve the 2.91% rate adjustment effective August 1st.
Councillor Eglin. I'm just thinking. The difference between, we're not doing the difference between 3% and 5%, it's just 2.91%. Is there a second?
That's already been done. The increase of the franchise fees from 3 to 5 was part of what the council approved back in February.
Is there a second to Councillor Ward-Melton's?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
Dave, do you have any update about the landfill that you wish to provide quickly?
Sure. Let's see. So I think we agreed we would talk about the yard debris and glass and drop-off options at another meeting because you've got a big list tonight. But if you have specific questions about that, here's what I can tell you about the landfill. We were informed on Thursday, June 17th at 1 o'clock that Riverbend Landfill would no longer accept waste from us after us being Recology Western Oregon after Saturday, June 19th. Later, Waste Management, who owns Riverbend Landfill, released a statement that they were hoping to stay open to the public to accept public self-haul waste until July 1st. They did manage to do that. The rest gets sort of complicated. The site is not technically closed. And I'd refer you to their website or their statements in the newspaper for details. But currently, the types of waste they are accepting are dirt and inert materials to reshape the property to turn landfill cells into things that look more like hills. They are temporarily metering the types of waste they accept. So it excludes the waste we collect and now also the waste that public self-haul customers would have typically brought to them. The statement says that there's a capacity issue due to delays in getting the expansion plan approved by the county. And if you follow that, that's complicated, and I definitely can't do a decent job of explaining land use board of appeals and the county and the legal challenges, and I won't try. But good luck. If you figure it out, please let me know. I could use a good explanation. So this not openness that's not a closure is temporary. The rep that we talked to at the time said this is not like a days or weeks temporary. This is like months or years. So at this point, we're focused on maintaining collection services. Our transfer station in McMinnville was remodeled with this possibility in mind. Phase one was to make the changes that allowed us to accept waste from the city of McMinnville. And I think phase three was the part where we had the changes in mind to when the landfill closed at some future date, that we would make those changes to allow us to handle all of the waste. So short timeline than we expected. We have a conditional use permit from the city of McMinnville, and we have a solid waste permit from the Department of Environmental Quality. We had some emergency waivers in place that allow us to operate while we make those changes. There will be a rate impact, but at this point, I can't really say what that will look like. It will cost us more to receive, process, and transport waste to Coffin Butte landfill. It'll cost us more to do that than it did to deliver waste directly to Riverbend landfill. And all I can tell you at this point is we'll reach out to you with that information as soon as we have it. There's a lot more things we could talk about in terms of like traffic patterns at McMinnville transfer station and those things, but I won't take your time if you don't want to know. But if there are any questions, I'll do what I can to help you.
And Dave, council, it's been shared with council that you've been asked not to provide any additional quotes on additional services until there's a better understanding of the rate impact of the landfill closure or non-closure.
That's correct. Because the same site is involved in accepting recycling and accepting yard debris. Well, they're sister sites. They share a property. That gets complicated too. But there may be changes with those aspects of the operation related to the increase in traffic and the changes, which means they may change the rates that they charge to us, the collection company, to deliver that material. And as I mentioned, there's going to be a rate adjustment to cover these costs. And when we're talking about adding programs, we usually talk about in terms of like, okay, well, it would take a 10% rate adjustment to add this service for everyone. When we have to change the rates because of the change in disposal site, the rates will be different, and it may cost us the same dollars in our projection to provide that service, but since the rates would be higher, the percentage would be lower. And if we raise the rates and use the same percentage as the current proposal, we'd over collect, and we don't want to do that either. So with so much up in the air, it's really a matter of, I guess, asking folks to be patient with any of the optional services to make sure that we get it right when it comes to providing the essential services.
Thank you. I think there are a lot of people in town who are going to be disappointed, and I'm not giving you a hard time. I'm just telling you that folks in town were looking forward to that. So we'll just wait and hope it gets resolved sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or?
Dave, I have a quick question on, I know we're not approving section 1, but just a quick question. Was there a rate increase to McMinnville residents when they decided to not send their trash to Riverbend landfill? Did they see a tonnage increase?
They did. So the collection rates went up, and the debris box ton rate that a McMinnville customer would pay to have a box hauled away, that ton rate was also higher than what other customers would pay if we were taking that material straight to Riverbend. So there was a general rate increase, and then also that ton rate did go up as well for McMinnville customers.
Which landfill do you have to go to possibly now?
So we were already taking the waste from McMinnville to the transfer station and delivering it down to Coffin Butte landfill, which is in Benton County, just outside Corvallis. We've been in contact with them, and they've agreed to honor the same terms, at least for now, with the new waste that we're receiving at the transfer station. So it will also go to Coffin Butte landfill. There are other landfills, and because we have more tons to offer, there's always a possibility we could negotiate a better deal somewhere else. And of course, the only reason we would do that is if there was a cost savings, and if that was the case, that would be reflected in the collection rates as well.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Appreciate your time. Moving on, item C, the League of Oregon Cities Line Program.
Yes, Mayor and Council, in your packet, there is a letter as well as a PowerPoint about the National League of Cities Service Line Warranty Program. We have been getting information from the National League of Cities. We just got some contracts just the other day, about last week, before your packet came out. So Natalie is here to explain and answer any questions about the program, and we do recommend that afterwards that you give staff an opportunity to check in with other cities if this is of interest to you, and have council review those documents and provide that back to your August meeting. But Natalie is here to talk about the program.
Thanks. Natalie, you're on.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, everyone, Mayor, Watkins, City Council, Ms. Beaucaire, and all other city officials for allowing me to some time to go over the program with you. I know that you guys do have a very busy schedule tonight, so I'm going to try to really just touch on the main points and then answer any questions that you may have for me on the program. So thank you again for allowing me to speak with you tonight. My name is Natalie Westfall, and I'm with HomeServe. And we actually administrate the National League of Cities Service Line Warranty Program. So we've worked with the National League of Cities since 2010, and we're currently working with over 900 cities and municipalities all across the country. And we're actually partnered with 22 communities there in Oregon as well to make our service line warranty available to the residents there. So just to give you just a brief little bit of a background, the National League of Cities got involved with a program like ours because they understand that the infrastructure in cities is aging, especially when it comes to water and sewer lines. So now I know cities and municipalities have been doing their part to maintain the main and sewer water lines in the street, but there's still miles and miles of lines that had kind of been neglected over time and really went into the residents' lateral water and sewer lines. So a lot of the times, I'm sure you get it there in the city of Carlton, when a homeowner has a frozen water line or a break or a line gets clogged with tree roots, their first call is typically to the city. So the city will most likely go out and make sure that the lines in the street are working properly, and about 99% of the time, those lines are fine because the city's been maintaining them, which is where you then find that the problem is on the resident side of the property. I think one of the most heartbreaking things is being the bearer of bad news and letting a homeowner know that they are responsible for those lines. And most of the time, they don't have the type of money to repair that line. Sometimes it can cost up to $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 to repair that last place. And I know for myself, the last place I want to see is my money going into my front yard. So that's kind of where our program came into play. Really what our main goal is that we are an educational program. So what we do is we offer a free public awareness campaign to all your residents, letting them know exactly, hey, these lateral lines are your responsibility. And then we give them tips on how to maintain them to keep them working properly. And then second, we give them a chance to transfer that risk from themselves to the National League of Cities Service Line program, which is also endorsed by the League of Oregon Cities as well. So the nice thing is our program is completely turnkey. We handle everything. So we handle marketing, we handle billing, all of our customer service comes through us, claims management, no cost to the city to participate. We actually do offer to share a portion of the revenue with the city for your participation if you chose to do so. That is not required. And it also is completely optional for the residents. So when we do offer this program to your residents, we're not saying that it is mandatory that they have to enroll in this. We really simply, one, want to educate them and let them know what they are responsible for so that they kind of already know, and it's that free public awareness campaign to them. But then also we do offer these lower cost solutions as well that they can kind of pick and choose what really works best for them. So we do offer external water lines, external sewer line, and also in-home plumbing coverage as well. So for this, the external water line coverage, we cover whatever your homeowners would be responsible for. I know that they're within the city limits of Carlton, that it is from the water main to the water meter is what the city owns. And then the homeowner is then responsible from the meter to the tap. And then outside the city limits of Carlton, I saw that the homeowner owns from the water main to the tap, meaning that they're responsible for that service line. So basically what that would be is our external water line, external sewer line are really set up pretty similarly. They cover those same things we would watch from within the city limits and the outside of the city limits. We would make sure we included that just in the mailings to your homeowners so that they knew what they were responsible for. And this really, what it does is helps cover everything from frozen lines, leaking lines, broken lines, slow running lines, anything that causes a disturbance to the homeowners for their service, that would be what we would help cover. And that is up to $8,500 per claim for that. Now for the sewer line, we will cover everything from where it enters the home all the way to where it connects to the main. And this covers everything as well of a simple clean out, a clog, tree root penetration, something that may have gone flushed down the toilet all the way up to fully replacing the line, even repairing any concrete in the street as well if we did have to go in for that. If we do have to move it, we're going to put it back how it needs to be there. Both products, they all come with 0 deductibles, no service fees. Another nice thing is there's no contract that the resident has to sign, so they can cancel at any time as well. As long as they're making that monthly payment, then they're completely covered through these warranties. The third product we do offer, it kind of picks up where those other two left off, which would be our in-home plumbing and drainage. This covers the lines inside the home. It also has no 0 deductibles, no service fees, no contract for the residents to sign as well. Now, anytime a resident would have an issue, they would make a phone call to us, just one phone call. We have a 24/7, 365 US-based customer service center. It's actually in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they're always on the phone with a live person. So then what they would do is go ahead and file the claim, and then we would dispatch a local area contract from the area to assess the problem. Another thing is we only use local contractors from there in the area. Few reasons that we do that is really to keep the dollars there in the community. And second, I think the most important part is that they understand the infrastructure there in the city of Carlton. So by using that local contractor, they know what the codes are. They know what the laterals are connecting with the city systems. So we want to use those local licensed contractors fulfilling the jobs up to your standards there in the city. And then really just going into kind of our marketing, the way that we market, we only will reach out to your residents with direct mail. So we won't be cold calling, bombarding them, no door to door or anything like that. We actually we'll mail 3 times a year to your residents. And the reason we do 3 times is the first would be your external water line, then the second would be your external sewer line, and then the third would be that in-home plumbing. We found that some homeowners were getting a little bit confused whenever we'd mail out, if we did all 3 of them at the same time, that they thought they were enrolling in all 3 of those programs at the same time. They can do that, and they can enroll in any of the programs at any time. So even when that first mailing went out, they could still get the in-home plumbing. And if they do bundle, they actually can receive a discount as well, just on how much, or depending if they do go with all 3 of the programs. And then basically with the city, we would make sure that you saw anything that was going to these homeowners before it went out to them. We always send over what the letter would look like. We want to make sure that the verbiage is something that you want to be sent out to your homeowners. And then also, we want to make sure that we're as transparent as possible with you, just so that you know what's going to be sent out to the residents. Now, once the letter was approved by the city, we would then set a mail date, and we would stick to that mail date that you would know exactly when the residents and homeowners there were getting the letters from us. And then there's a couple different ways they could sign up. Now, I know that the first mailing, cities are typically a little bit hesitant just about getting calls to the city. What is this letter? So we sometimes try to have some type of marketing campaign posted on the city website, any way to kind of get the word out to the homeowners that they know that this program is coming. And then also we really like to train kind of the frontline city officials as well. We'll give them just like some overview of the program and just our number, because we'd like you to just send them over to our customer service team to answer any of those questions, so that the city isn't getting bombarded with a bunch of calls about what the program entails. And our customer service team, you don't have to be enrolled in a program. They will answer any questions and are more than happy to just make sure that the residents understand what the program actually does entail. So basically, the residents after that point would be able to call us directly and ask any questions. They can enroll over the phone. They can also enroll at the bottom. We do have a postage paid envelope in the mailings as well that they can tear off the bottom form and send that back to us to enroll. They can also go on our website as well to enroll. Like I said, we currently have over 900 partners across the US. The program has been offered through the National League of Cities since 2010, and we've fixed over 1.2 million lines across the country and saved residents over $400 million. Our program is an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and has a 98% customer satisfaction rating. So basically, moving forward, if the city of Carlton did want to participate, what we really ask for is 2 things. We would ask for the city logo whenever we mail out. And the reason we do that is that we want your residents to open this mail, because we want them to understand their responsibilities there. Like I said, all these letters would go through the city first before we would just send them out. And then if you did choose to partner with our program, we would set up an onboarding call with an account manager who would be specifically for the city of Carlton, where they would be working one-on-one or with as many of city officials that wanted to be a part of it as well. But we would go through kind of the timeline and the steps needed to get the program rolled out there. And then the last thing that I did kind of skim over briefly is that we do offer a royalty as well for the city. How it works is it's 50 cents per product sold. So if a homeowner got all 3 products offered, we would pay $1.50 a month that's paid out in a royalty check each January to the city there. Now you can also choose not to go with the royalty program, and that savings would be passed straight on to your homeowners. So looking at kind of the pricing, your external water service line for your homeowners, if you went with the royalty, would be $6.75 a month. If you chose to not go with the royalty, it would be $6.25 a month. For your external sewer, you'd be looking for the homeowners, it'd be $7.75 per month. If you did not go with the royalty, it'd be $7.25 a month. And then your interior plumbing and drainage plan is at $9.99 per month, or it would be $9.45 if you chose not to go with that royalty. Now, some cities take the royalty, some do not, and you can really choose what you would like to do with those funds. I know some of the cities I've worked with in the past add it to a general fund. Some help to support lower income families that may need assistance with utilities, or if you have an infrastructure project in the future in the works, you could always use it towards that as well. So that was really the main points of the program. And I'm now opening it to any questions that anyone may have.
So the dollar amount you were just referring to, like between $6 and $9 for the various services per month, so those are the premiums basically to the homeowner, correct?
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Okay, so the dollar amount you were referring to the homeowner between $6 and $9, depending on the service, those are basically the monthly premiums paid by the homeowner.
Yes, that is correct.
And you mentioned something if if the homeowner bundled the services, then it would be less, correct?
Yes. So, and then also if they choose to, they can actually choose to, they can do monthly, or if they decided to do annually, there is also, there could be a discount as well if they chose to pay per year. Now, if they chose to cancel, we would reimburse them that money for any of the months that they made. We'd retro that back for any of the months that they did not use.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that just for homeowners, or can businesses also use it? Like
It's
that now?
actually, unfortunately, just for homeowners, for the single family houses.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
is the program a for-profit program? Are you guys making a profit on it? Yes.
Well, so with the program, when the homeowner does enroll, we are making money with partnering, at least I believe so. I would have to kind of get back to you on that. I'm not 100% sure. I know that we are making money for those, for the products that we are offering. But I believe it's really just partnership so that we can offer these lower costs to the homeowners. Now, as far as whenever we do get the local licensed contractors, I know that we don't set their pricing or anything. Like, they can keep their same pricing that they offered. That makes sense. I would have to double check on the not-for-profit or for-profit then for you, sir.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, I just have a suggestion. I was wondering if the city could think about the idea of creating a fund for the city that citizens can contribute to it. And in the case of something like that happen, that fund could be used instead of using a warranty, it's essentially for profit. Like, if we could create something not for profit in our own city that we could be used here, instead of contributing to an outside source and then sort of deal with it inside of the city.
I think it's worth discussion.
Have a pretty big reserve.
Yeah,
That pay, I think, especially, some.
Yeah, I guess in the beginning, probably.
Well, yeah, my firsthand experience, my sister just had her sewer replaced, she's on it. And it's a lot more than $160 a month or a year.
Yeah.
Self-insurance programs, which is what you're talking about,
Are regulated by the insurance commissioner, so the city would have to get involved in establishing a lawful self-insurance pool. Most cities, there are a few cities that do self-insurance, such as the city of Portland covers its own self-liability coverage. It doesn't buy
coverage, but most smaller cities can't take the big loss that can occur. And so, the question becomes whether you want to be competing with the private companies. This is essentially a home warranty insurance policy, a form of it, specialized.
Yeah.
And most cities, I've not seen cities try and compete with that industry, but it's I don't think it's illegal to do so. If you wanted to do so, and jump through the hoops, then you have to do so to set up the insurance reserve pool.
Yeah, I think long term would be really helpful for them to save us money. Short term, of course, you might have some losses, but I think long term wise.
I think the good thing though is I wouldn't force everybody to do it if they didn't need to. And if you have one person who takes advantage of it, I don't know.
We take losses on other things like the pool and other things in the city, so I don't see why it takes so much even something like that, even more important.
Rather than continue this discussion right now, Shannon, your alternatives on this were number 2, don't approve it necessarily. Is that what you were saying? Don't.
Yes, if you want more information, you want me to contact other cities to see what their experience has been with the program. If you wish for me to do some research about the self-insurance option, allow council to review the agreements that were provided to us and provide additional feedback at the August meeting for additional discussion.
You just said that you just received some documents that we haven't seen yet.
About a week ago, yes. And so council would be able to review those in the next.
Yeah, I just received them on Friday.
I mean, I think it would be helpful before we make that final decision.
So do we need a motion to, we just need to make a
Consensus
decision?
of council would be adequate.
Okay, does that sound good to you? Just hold off and.
I would like to move forward with getting more information, not necessarily hold off.
Well, I meant hold off on making a decision tonight, sorry, but yeah, get some more
Any
information.
more information? Are you interested in how other cities have utilized the program and how successful or unsuccessful it's been?
Yeah.
And are you interested in the self-insurance option?
I'll be interested to see other cities that have done self-insurance.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find it for this particular program. Self-insurance of general liability is something much bigger cities do. So it's pretty limited in scope to those cities that would otherwise be paying out multiple millions of premiums.
Seems like it would be quite extensive for the city to administer that program.
Certainly, I don't know. That's one of the things that I think one of the things that your city manager would be looking into is even if you endorse this particular program with this particular private insurer, how much city staff time would be utilized in acting as a referral agent, or explaining to people that no, we are not fixing your collateral. This is an insurance program that you need to contact these people over here, and whether that, what experience other cities have had in connection with that would be good feedback for the city to get.
Okay, then we'll just put this to the side for right now. Thank you so much, Natalie, for your time. And can you make sure it's on the August agenda?
It will be on the August agenda.
You're welcome. And I will also send over some referrals as well. That way, if you wanted to reach out to see how it's working in other cities, I can do that. I can send those over to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, moving on to number D, special event application from the Yamhill Child Development Center. Lori, you're up.
Lori, you're muted.
Is that better? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for having me. And thanks for being here. I'm here representing Yamhill Carlton Child Development Center, YCCDC, a local nonprofit for those who are new to the council. I would like to announce the Carlton Chalk Walk 2021 is in motion. All businesses relevant to CCW 2021 have signed the form provided by the city, allowing chalk artists to use the utility strip in front of their businesses as prior years. This year, the event will be conducted in the same format as CCW 2019. YCCDC is not requesting the use of any city property or facility. CCW 2021 is not hosting any vendors of any nature, nor asking to close any public streets or parking lots. So I'm here.
Are there any questions? Nice event.
Do we need a motion to approve?
We need a motion.
I make a motion to approve the Carlton Chalk Walk event application.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I would like to request once again that the city's website event lineup include the Carlton Chalk Walk and recognize the city council granted YCCDC an annual date of the first Saturday in August in 2016. And we will be doing a Main Street cleanup on Tuesday from 5:30 to 7:30 a.m. to accommodate the businesses on August 3rd.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second special event, Joanne, this is for the city of Carlton, Carlton Brush.
Hey there, everybody. Good evening. So I'm a CBA board member, so I'm representing the Carlton Business Association board, and I'm also one of the co-chairs for this event as well. Dane Campbell from Pike Road is chairing it, and I'm co-chairing it with him. So I go, as many of you guys know, last year we were unable to host any events, due to the pandemic. So this year we're kind of a little late to the game. Normally we start planning this early in the year, but we weren't very sure about hosting any events. But this will be the only fundraising event for the Carlton Business Association. And with this event, we also provide 40% of the proceeds back to local nonprofits and charities. In 2019, we gave back to Yamhill Carlton Together Cares, the wrestling program, who was a huge help, Juliet's House, and I believe that's it. So this year we're focusing on sports programs. So we want to provide the proceeds back to the wrestling, hopefully the soccer, the track, and any other volunteers that we can get for this event. We are doing it a little differently. So mostly it's been, wine and food focused, and stomp obviously related. It's a great stomping competition, which is a lot of fun for both adults and kids. This year we're going to do more kids activities. So there'll be a bouncy house. I did provide a map that shows the location of where that is. We'd also like to close the Pine Street city parking lot, which we've done in the past. It's been really successful to have it up in the, instead of having it in the lower park, which it has been before, up here in the in Carlton area. So as many of you know, Carlton Business Association is an organization that helps build the businesses here in the community and, also the community. So with having it up in the city parking lot, we're hoping to provide a lot of business to the vendors that are participating and also the businesses in downtown. It is going to be closed at 5 p.m. So in hopes that people go and support all the local restaurants and having dinner in town.
So you're going to be, excuse me, are you done?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm going to ask you, so you're going to be going back to the parking lot. Is that where you're
Yes.
gonna be doing that?
Yes, that's where we did it in 2019 and it was really successful. So we'd like to continue to do that as well.
Linda, can I ask you a question? So our little business participates usually in Carlton Crest. Do I need to abstain from a vote? Well, does that matter?
No, service on nonprofits is exempt from conflict of interest rules.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments or discussion?
I move that we approve the Carlton Crest application for September 11th, 2021.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions? Okay, you're good to go.
Thank you very much.
Right. Our at item F, the water reservoir dredging project, that was the handout that Shannon asked out to us.
Yes, that came just as the council packets went out, so that was another addition to the packet. We do have a printout in front of you. The city did receive one bid for the dredging project, and Gordon is here to talk about that bid process and the recommendation for award for the reservoir dredging project. Before we get into the details of that recommendation, I do want to talk to, just briefly, make council aware that we had reached out to Representative Ron Noble early in May about our wastewater plant upgrades that needed to be conducted that are an estimated cost of $6.8 million. And House Bill 5006 is currently on the governor's desk for signature, and it includes $5.8 million for the city of Carlton wastewater plants. And so that is awaiting signature. We thank Representative Noble for going forward with Carlton's interest, and we look forward to working with the state of Oregon to receive those monies in the future. Gordon, do you want to talk about the bidding process?
Sure. So I am on the phone here because at home here, I don't have very good reception. And if I tried to put my face up on the screen, I'd probably lose all connection. So please bear with me. You'll just hear my voice. So we had a virtual bid opening on the 29th. And prior to that, we had a non-mandatory pre-bid walkthrough, which was, we had 4 contractors at that, and they all seemed very interested, all of them in the dredging business. And only one of them actually submitted a bid, and that was Bioterra. It was a good bid, meaning that they acknowledged all the addendum, they had the bid bond, they had all the documents in order that they needed to, and there was no errors found in their bid. And we did check the contractor's website. Contractors are listed there. You can find their number and you can find out if there are any complaints or actions that have been made against that contractor. And Bioterra is in good standing. The bid was $743,000, which is substantially lower than expected based on talking to contractors during the design period. It was expected more to be in the range of $2 million. They found a way to do this more cost effectively. I did talk to them after the bid opening and went over their bid and made sure that they hadn't had any oversights or any buyer's remorse. They're very confident that they can do this work for the bid amount that they have submitted. Most of the other contractors had figured they would need helicopters to bring in the dredge to the reservoir site, but they have small enough dredges that they are going to be able to use the access road with a little bit of improvements. So they have also provided information about work that they have done in the past. They do dredging projects. That's one of the main things they do. And several of the projects are of the same contract size or larger. So they do have the financial ability to do projects of this size. And based on their bid and based on all the findings and research that we did, our recommendation is that the city move forward and award this contract. I will say it's a little bit of a time crunch. We have a limited window to do in-water work. So if the council approves the contract tonight, we will be sending out those contracts overnight in the morning so that they'll be receiving it right away and we can get this project moving. So with that, are there any questions?
Gordon, Shirley, I was just wondering if you have any sense as to why the other companies declined to bid?
I did not call them, but I did talk to Bioterra about that. They were also very shocked because there's been several other bidding projects out, and dredging projects out, and their folks were bidding on those. Potential that they're just busy. That's been happening a lot lately. We're seeing fewer and fewer bids on projects just because people are busy and they can't find actually employees. I know of several contractors that have declined to bid on projects because they can't find the people to do the work if they won the project. So that's another possibility that's out there.
Walt?
Yes, Gordon, I recall seeing a notice of intent to award come by my desk, but I can't recall the date you sent that out. When did that go out?
That was sent out on the 29th. So unless the city received a protest by the end of the day today, meaning 5 o'clock, there was then no protest and we could actually award the project and send out the contracts tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Hey, Gordon, it's Kathy. I was a little concerned when you said it was so much lower than you anticipated, but I feel like you've given an adequate explanation of really checking that they are ready to do this. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was a little concerned myself. That's why I had a long conversation with them and took a look at their past projects as well.
So, Gordon, so since it is substantially less than what was estimated, if for some reason they got into this project and realized they way underbid, I mean, do they have a way, can they come back to us or is this it?
Well, this is it. They have to provide a payment performance bond, which says they will do the work for the scope of work that's been outlined in the contract documents for this price. However, if the city and the company mutually agree to expand the scope because of available funding, the project may involve more dredging than what was initially envisioned. Is that a possibility, Gordon?
Yeah, in fact, that's a very good possibility. The city has the funding through a grant that covers this amount and more. So we can certainly look at potentially dredging more material out, which would be of benefit to the city. Because the more material you get out, the more volume you have in your raw water reservoir. And that simply means your water system is more resilient when you have events like droughts that occur, because you have more storage to hold you through those times. So it's certainly something that we will be talking to them about if this is awarded.
Keeping in mind that this grant that we have is specifically for this project, so that's what we'll be able to use the money for.
Yes.
Yeah, only.
And
Yeah.
I suppose if we wanted to expand beyond the dredging, we would have to go back to the state and talk to them about that. They may say no, but they may consider it as well.
Okay. That's, yeah.
I would, hey Gordon, this is Kevin. I have a statement and then a question. I would personally like to see more material removed if possible, because I understand that we're limited. And so how is there accountability for the 13,000 cubic yards? This is just a curiosity. Like, is it dump tickets, or how do we know how much material? How's that work?
Right, that's a great question. So there is a requirement in the specifications that they do a pre and post survey so that we can actually calculate that volume. And many of the dredgers actually have equipment on their dredges that actually they put in that survey data into that, and so they know how much they're taking out as they go.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments, discussion? So what happens if they go over 13,000 cubic yards?
It would have to be a contract amendment that expands, that authorizes that as a change order and provides for a price for that will significantly come back to this council.
Right, and the bid was set up as a unit price, meaning they gave us a price per cubic yard. So that price is already set. It's just a matter of did you go slightly under? Did you go slightly over? Did you go a whole lot over? We already have that unit price. So it's not a negotiated price.
Is there any more discussion?
I make a motion to approve a bid award to Bioterra Incorporated to complete the raw water reservoir dredging project for $743,000.
And authorizing the mayor to execute contract.
Authorizing the mayor to execute.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right. We are at item G, goal number 1.3.2, municipal building civic center discussion.
Mayor and Council, by far the largest component of your packet tonight is the information related to the steps on this goal. The council has been given 3 basic options to pursue this goal. On discussion, if options 2 or 3 are decided upon, we just need a little more guidance about what to do before the next. After that one.
Hey, is there any discussion? I haven't seen anybody wants to go first. Yeah. Councilor Ward Mullen.
Well, after, well, for me personally, this is like Groundhog Day times three. But we are here again looking at this. But I having said that, a lot of things have changed. The first two times that we have gone through this, and I appreciate Shannon you providing such complete information for me to review this and for all of us and to assess our options. Based on my review of this, frankly, I believe we only have one option. I mean, to me, doing nothing just is not an option. There's too much at stake. We know we have a, and I learned through you. I mean, we have an obligation to keep. I mean, to do nothing means that we would not be correcting the problems that we know exist with this building and the other building. So just that alone, I don't think just saying we're going to do nothing would pass muster. And I am, of the mindset that option 2 is not for all of the potential money, all the unknowns that we have that would go into a renovation of this building and the other building. It just doesn't seem feasible. Furthermore, well, especially with the building that the police department currently occupies, we would almost have to build a building in a building to have it qualify for because the police agency is a category 4. Consider that as opposed to retail as category 2. So unless all of those seismic upgrades, everything is done, we would never be able to have a command center. So for that reason, I am of the opinion that City Hall is what is needed.
Okay, I'll have just a couple of things. I'm just wondering if we need to step back. I know there's a few of us that are a little bit new on the council, and I apologize, Shirley, because I know you've heard this for many years, but I'm wondering if there's other options, one of which might be to look at other building sites. I'm not saying that we don't need a city hall, but I'm wondering if we could look at maybe other land that we own, simply because this is good retail space for the future. Is a possible option. And wondering if we just need a work session just to talk about maybe some alternatives. If I think of something else, I'll say it.
What I am seeing this vote as being is a decision to move forward with the I mean, we've got 3 choices here. One of them being a decision to move forward with building a new civic center, emergency response areas, and city hall. At this point, from the discussions we've had, I'm thinking that what it is just make the decision to move forward and then start looking at some of the things that you're talking about, Councilor Eglin, about starting to look at, if we're going to do it, what's it going to look like?
Can I ask what the definition of a civic center is?
What I heard is it's providing services to the city. So it wasn't just city hall, it could be providing, I've heard councilors say they wanted a space for the community. So if there needed to be a community meeting, having the ability for a community group to even come after hours if they wanted to do that, or host classes. I've heard that as an interest. I've also heard the retail interest from councilors. So providing services to the community. So it wasn't just about police. It wasn't just about administration. it was about services to the community. So civic centers seem to be more appropriate than sometimes the connotation that comes with city hall or police facility.
Well, to me, that's another discussion to have too.
Well, one of the things that we're getting some push from the community for too is the whole concept of being emergency ready, so that if we are in another situation such as we were in this winter with the ice storm, instead of our staff having to go home because they had no electricity and no phone or communications here, that we would actually have a building that would provide those services and that they would be able to continue working from the building, which would also provide shelter, a warming shelter, or this summer, a cooling shelter for the community, so that we would have the space that we could, that people in the community would be able to come to for emergency services. We had one meeting with with residents who are quite concerned about the fact of emergency preparedness, that really out of this building, we have none, and we have no way of providing it, just because the building is so old and it's so obsolete that there's no way to provide those services out of this building. I mean, we can't even have a full council meeting because we've got problems with space for one thing, but the other thing is communications. So we're
that letter from the citizens is in this packet.
Yeah, if you had a chance to see that letter from the citizens on what our citizens expect the city to provide. I can't find the letter right now. There's no way that we can do that with what we've got here now. I've got to say that when we first started talking about this again, well, yeah, thank you. When I was 2 years ago, when I was on the council and we were starting to talk about a new city hall, I was rolling my eyes and I was not excited about the whole project at all. I've not, we were just kind of barreling ahead on it. And I'm grateful that we had, in that sense, we had COVID come along, because with the uncertainty of the funding, we were able to slow down a little bit and go back and look. And I think we've done a lot more research. I think we've had a lot more information between everything that's come through, particularly after going through the ice storm and knowing that our emergency services people, I mean, you heard what, right after that, when we had the debrief, what our public works were talking about as far as what they were sweating, just trying to keep the sewer pumping and the water pumping so that we wouldn't have streets full of sewer backing up. That this office was virtually closed because we didn't even have a generator. That really kind of bothered me. If you read this letter, I think that gives you some food for thought. We expect our city officials to be in contact with emergency response planners and to be prepared. We expect that Carlton has safe buildings for, number one, for daily city work, and dedicated space for our emergency operations center with backup power tested during daily monthly drills. We expect fire and police and school board shelters and city government to work together as a local emergency response team during a disaster. Communication and annual drills are vital, and we can't do that with what we've got now.
We just can do it through partnerships to some degree, which I don't know that we have right now.
I think that should be a topic of discussion. I don't think we have them for our city though, do we? What are you thinking of?
I'm thinking the schools, I'm thinking of Yamhill, I'm thinking of Carlton all together, thinking of maybe YCTC when they build their building. I mean, we need to.
One of the problems with all of those, I'm not sure what we'd be looking at in terms of seismic stability. All of those buildings are older. Our building is kind of scary older.
I mean, I'm all in favor of partnering, but partnering as a secondary aspect of this, I believe that we, the city of Carlton, need to be thinking in terms of being self-sustaining. From my point of view, I don't want to rely on the city of Yamhill, on the, any of these other agencies, but, in the first instance, we have to look at what the possible worst case scenario is and be prepared to respond to the needs of this community in terms of emergency situations on our own without looking at any other partnerships or agencies. I think that's great on a secondary basis. I think we should always be doing that, but that's just my opinion about it.
I think the more partnership we have, more the response could be delayed, especially in emergency. If we have to be contacting other agencies to help us. For instance, the school, I think, just have no place. And imagine the police would be in the city hall. I think the response could be much faster in the case of emergency. And I think one thing to consider too is the staff. I think we are looking at the city to grow, and it seems like at the current city hall we're pretty much a capacity for staff, so we can hire new people without having a bigger building. So where are we going to be putting those new staff as the city keeps growing? There's nowhere to go.
I think, from my point of view, we need to be looking at this that whatever we do has to be reliable 50 years from now. I mean, to think in those, in that sort of long-term sense. One thing that's changed, I don't want to get ahead of things in terms of any funding that we're going to get from the state, but you had mentioned it, and I'm expecting it's going to happen. And when we were looking at this back with FFA, we knew at that time that we had to deal with the water treatment facility and millions of dollars that it was going to take, and the water projects, which we've gotten $9.5 million in grant money for that. Now we're about hopefully to get 5.8 million plus what we ourselves got from the federal government, plus what we hope, fingers crossed, that we might get from the county. And so that really kind of puts a different perspective on where we are fiscally. And I think so, when we think about having to pay for all those projects plus and want to build a city hall. So things have changed for the better.
We are, let's see, we've got $1 million coming in, is it from SDCs? From the JR Meadows?
For the prepay of the SDCs. That was 500,000, and that was to help facilitate getting the concrete.
Which is part of the sewer projects that we're working on.
That
So
is correct.
that's going to be coming in too for the sewer projects. Plus the numbers the amounts that Shirley was just mentioning. So we're not as tight. I mean, we're always going to be tight financially. I think that we're probably at a point, and I want to tell you guys that it's taken me 6 months to come around to this. This has not been something that I just woke up the other morning and decided, boy, let's do it. I'm not excited about the idea of having to go out and do what we're going to do and explaining to a whole bunch of folks that maybe my perspective has changed a little bit on it too. But I think as I've listened to the discussions and watched what we've been dealing with for the past 6 months, we had stuff happen in the last 6 months that we never expected to happen. We didn't expect to have an ice storm. We didn't expect to have a heat dome.
Fires.
And
That didn't come
we
here,
don't,
but still.
yeah, and the fires, COVID. There were a lot of things that, as I heard staff and our emergency response folks talking about what they dealt with, we were just really, really lucky. We were lucky to have the people that we did working and working on taking care of this. And we were lucky that the ice storm didn't last more than 4 or 5 days as far as having our services out. Because there's no way that we could have helped the city. I don't know how we would have worked out with the generators, because they were shuffling generators around to make sure that everybody had what they need. Our police department basically was, going home to charge their phones. So that's not the way a city operates.
I think Councilor Maher has some input.
Councilor Maher.
Hi, thanks. Couple of things for me. I like Councilor Eglin's idea that we really need to look at some other locations. That still concerns me. As we are growing and pursuing economic development and all of these things, an address on Main Street for essentially a government building, I think we could do better. I think that's prime retail space, and I want to be sure that we don't put a building on that site just because we haven't looked hard enough or negotiated to buy something. And that is short-sighted in my mind, to not consider other sites when that could be sold or incorporated some way for that retail space. That will generate revenue, that will generate jobs, that'll generate so many more things for us for that 50-year plan. But just continuing to build on that site just because it's there, I think is short-sighted of us. And so I think we really need to pursue some other locations.
Councilor Skipper.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's being shared tonight. But I think the focus is 1, 2, or 3. I have the same questions about location, what it looks like, cost. I don't want to see more funds than we're already taking from certain funds. So I want to see what that looks like in loan terms. I have a ton of questions, but right now we're looking at 3 options in front of us.
But are those the only options?
But in my opinion, yes, because you have to do nothing, you remodel what you have, or you start looking at what a new building. We're not saying we're building a new building here tonight. We're saying we would like to look forward to whether it's purchasing property, things that can be discussed in the future. I was on the fence too, and it was very difficult for me to come around to this, but touring the facilities and then looking at what it would cost to remodel our existing facilities, is a lot of it is cosmetic and a lot of it doesn't address size. I mean, you've got $200,000 just in the parking lot. So you have it's going to be over $1 million when all is said and done to just, do the roofing, the things that don't look pretty, the HVAC systems, the concrete work. So that to me isn't an option. It feels like, yes, I have these same exact questions that you do, and I want to look at all our options. But tonight we only have 3 on the table. We're not designing the city hall. We're not looking at a different site. We're making a decision as elected officials, what makes sense for the city long term. And to my opinion, there's no other choice but to look into and discuss and have those conversations, but it revolves around a new building.
And is it possible to talk about financing bond versus debt? also in that discussion?
It's not only possible, it's absolutely necessary.
From my understanding, we are looking at finance, right? And we have the funds to do it. We wouldn't increase anything for the city, property tax.
No, we're raising our water rates.
Well, that is already happening, right? It doesn't have to do with the building that we're building. From what my understanding, we've been gathering money already for years. From the water.
What happened was, I mean, as you probably know, we did go out for a bond for, it was, yeah, and for the public safety building, but it was always the intention the city hall was gonna happen. And when that failed, the decision was made then, well, we're just gonna go with this last round of close, we're just gonna go with the financing option. So, I mean, of course, I mean, we can look at that. It's I've been through 2 bond initiatives here with the city, and it's always a big uphill climb, so.
Always, I know, I've been on the school board, I understand that, but I think it's something that we have to.
Well,
look at
that
for
would
our
be part of-
citizens.
I agree with what you're saying, is that's part of my biggest concern is, are we gonna bump up that, which I don't want to see, so that I agree with that, but I think.
But you've got to make the decision to move forward before you start talking about that. So.
And we've also got a lot of projects, big projects that we are starting right now. There is always something unforeseen. There's going to be additional expenditures, probably with most of those big projects. And so that needs to be a part of this discussion as well, of course.
Yeah.
I think we need to move relatively fast, considering the interest rates are all time lows. And we would save a ton of money by using or taking the interest rate being so low right now, instead of whatever 1-2 years and the interest rates are higher. We'll save considerably a lot of money with that.
I mean, I agree.
If we take a long time, we probably will lose an opportunity.
I agree that because of the interest, that being part of it, time is of the essence in terms of us pulling together all this information that we want to discuss and our options, but we need to really move forward with it. Just, can't keep delaying.
And buying a new land is not an easy thing. It'll take time to buy a new site. It'll take research, it'll take resources, that time.
We have to think long term. I don't, as Kathy said, I don't think we want to be so excited either. So I think we need another discussion at a minimum.
May I try to summarize what I've heard thus far, please? So I have not heard thus far any interest in option 1 or 2. What I've heard is questions surrounding option 3. And the questions that I've heard are, what would if we don't increase what we're currently contributing to the capital investment fund, and we transfer that to debt service, what in terms of a loan would that mean for a budget for the project? I've also heard a question of, can we revisit going out for a bond for the project versus financing the entire thing? I've heard an interest in retail for this space, whether that means retail on a bottom layer that then is expanded into a city staff at a later time, or do we consider out of the box ideas about retail that takes over the building with the long-term goal of moving on, purchasing a property elsewhere? But retail is an issue and a consideration line to be discussed. As far as the utility rates go, with this money coming in, we will be bringing in, knock on wood, we don't have any in this room. We would be bringing Deb in to reanalyze what she projected any increase in costs would be with this incoming money. We also have additional options with the American Rescue Plan coming into the city as well as the county for additional infrastructure funding, which we will do our best to go for. We also have some new federal legislation specifically for infrastructure that your team is going to be meeting this week to prioritize projects that if those opportunities present themselves, we can take advantage of them without having to increase rates at that point in time. So I've heard loan terms, retail, bond. But I've not heard any interest thus far in options 1 or 2. Do I have consensus to move forward and bring back information about loan terms, bond information? And do I have a consensus to be able to work with Holst to see what a retail design, even partial, either here or and could be flex space. So it's either City Hall goes down and or retail goes up. But do I have permission to engage Holst to look at sort of a?
I don't think the city would be interested in retail space. I don't understand that piece of it.
So there has been discussions with some councilors about having retail space on the bottom and City Hall administrative offices on the top floor. Like
Lincoln City.
I want to say live work, but it's work. So that is an option. We don't have to be confined to what has currently been presented to council. I understand there was concerns about the facade.
The other thing I'm not sure we have a good answer for is, where are we working while all this is happening? Are we going to be looking at temporary buildings somewhere? I mean, how do we manage? What's the plan that'll be associated with any construction should we go down that route? That piece needs to be discussed between us as well.
Certainly, it would need to be discussed, and any construction project needs to be phased and planned for. And depending on what the ultimate outcome is, whether or not we're building on this piece of property or another piece of property, how that's phased as far as construction and being able to move facilities so that we can maintain services would have to be part of that plan.
So the other thing that I'd like to add into your list of what you have consensus on is, since there is an interest by some folks of looking at other location options, is to provide us with an inventory of city-owned property that could even conceivably be considered for such a project. And aside from that, I mean, otherwise we'll be looking at other owners of real estate in this town, and there's certainly nothing on the market, let's put it that way. So
thank you. That was on my list. I just missed it. So thank you.
Shannon, do we understand the scope of our project? Because to me, it kind of changed a little bit in the school when this building center discussion or center, I guess. So that's something we need to discuss, because it seems a little bit bigger than what we has been discussed in the past. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Actually, I don't think the scope has really changed that much. I think the description has changed. Because these were all, some of them were features that we had talked about earlier, the idea of a command center, which is something that you really are going to be relying on for emergency situations. That was one thing that we talked about. Those, by the way, are heavily granted. So there's public money and grant money available for such things.
and I would also encourage everyone to really take a look at the documents that were shared with us from the city of Beaverton and what they've done. They went for a bond. They had a huge, Beaverton is a completely different situation than us, but they really have some great opportunities with their city hall and partnering with PGE, and so there's a lot of opportunities out there for piece parts of this project. So
yeah, that's one thing. It's when you're talking about looking at how you're doing it, none of it is gonna be like one big lump sum that we're just gonna go to the bank and pick up that sum and that's it. There are going to be pieces all around this. Because he's going to be busy finding financing, as we announced, or bond. Yeah, probably to the extent we can, we will avoid that.
And Shannon, one of the things you thought you were hearing and asking of us was there permission to move forward with Holst? I feel like we should perhaps hold off on that until we really explore some other locations, because that's just going to cause billable hours, right?
Well, Holst could also help us analyze the cost benefit of alternative locations.
We have a lot invested in Holst right now. So from my point of view, walking away from that was a bad idea.
Yeah, not necessarily walking away from them, but if we're looking at a location in Lower Park, for example, what would the cost be associated with having to carve out part of the hillside as far as the benefit to building there? They could also help just minor, again, not a significant redesign, but just look at options for retail, since that is of an interest to some city councilors. So I don't want to say significant investment in Holst, but just a preliminary analysis to help get council the answers you're asking for.
So.
Yeah, because if it wasn't Holst, it would have to be somebody.
Yeah, we'd be having to, yeah, it's not. Okay, folks, so are we going to go for option 3?
Are we giving?
I'm asking
for consensus. Are we doing that or we doing both?
A consensus for which option to go forward with the focus based upon that option on some of these questions that have been asked for the next meeting. Is there consensus for option 3?
I would say yes as well.
Councilor Erickson?
Yep. Okay. That was number H, goal 1.4, the comprehensive plan and development code update discussion.
So one of the council's goals, one of the significant ones, was to update the city's comprehensive plan in the development code. At this point in time, in order to, rather than piecemeal out parts of the comprehensive code and the development code, I am asking council to consider authorizing staff to develop a RFP to see if there's a company that can give a holistic, focused look that engages the community and council with the numerous ideas that people want incorporated, but can give it that focused attention. So right now I'm asking to see if there's interest for us just to develop an RFP to see what it would cost and if there's interest from companies to give it this focused holistic look. That's what I'm asking for.
Consensus again. Or are we waiting? I agree with that.
Do we have to have a budget money? We have budget for it.
I would go up to, we budgeted right now $20,000 that you've approved. In the RFP, we would certainly get more information about whether or not that needs to be increased or if that's adequate. That sounds good.
As part of an RFP, you ask people to give budget projections on what the different tasks they would be undertaking and what they anticipate the hours and cost would be for that.
I know we're going to go back to the economic development, it was in the work session. I see a real link between that and this, because it really overlaps in so many ways in terms of community input, et cetera.
So, consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. There were a couple things in the work session, if I may.
Yes, I was just going to ask you if you wanted to move it.
Highway 47. I've given you a lot of background information about where we're currently at, about ADA grants as well as next steps on Highway 47. What I would like consensus on is there any opposition for me to send this draft letter that would now be final with consensus to ODOT in furtherance of the council's goal of moving forward with making sure the community's needs are put first?
The only question I had, Shannon, on there was the fiscal impact. And I don't know if that's part of this letter. I mean, I read through it, but I confused me a little bit. But $11,000 for enhanced pedestrian crossings at 2 intersections. I know those intersections. What is enhanced pedestrian crossings? Are we just talking striping? Are we talking signs / flashing lights? Like 11,000 just seems really expensive. But I don't know what enhanced pedestrian crossing is.
We're talking about signage and we're talking about striping. The flashing lights are quite expensive, much more than you would anticipate for the $11,000 for the 2 intersections, unfortunately. Do you want to give any additional details?
We're basically looking at those 2 confusing intersections and getting some type of traffic control mechanism to help alleviate that. And so it's kind of a broad stroke at many different options. That cost will vary in what we get ODOT to approve. They may not be as excited about all of ours, but we're asking for them to do improvements. So it's kind of a guesstimate, I guess, on those options.
Yeah, that's the estimate from ODOT for the additional signage and striping. And yes, you're right, it is confusing because the ADA component is sort of like a subcomponent to Highway 47. It's being driven by the lawsuit that ODOT had about the ADA ramps. And so that is occurring, but we have this opportunity for the enhanced pedestrian crossings at these 2 intersections through that sub-component of Highway 47.
I have a question here on this page 7 where it talks about the following the project scope. ODOT will begin work on an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Carlton. My question is that where we transfer the ownership of Hyman Road?
Ultimately, I think that will be a component of that intergovernmental agreement, would be the transfer of jurisdiction from the existing alignment to the new alignment and the acceptance of the existing alignment by the city, presumably upon its reconstruction.
I think that's pending on the completion and the approval of the realignment before we take it over.
Yeah, I mean, I would want to make sure that the city of Carlton is satisfied with the result of what we want from ODOT before we sign off on our streets for that, doing that transfer.
So my understanding of this initial agreement that would come after the discussion of scope within ODOT is that we would be entering into an agreement with ODOT to proceed with the project. And so at that point in time, they could go from conceptual to start with design and community engagement opportunities about what that design would look like. And that my understanding at that point in time, the transfer would not happen. That would happen at a later point in time. As council mentioned, it would be a component, but a later.
Yeah, okay. I just wouldn't want to do it up front and then, we're not happy with what they're telling us.
The one thing that I missed on here, we had discussed that with them as we were talking about the enhanced crosswalks, was also just signage on Pine and what did we decide to do?
So they are still having internal discussions about what that's going to look like. We're still working on it.
Okay. Okay, and that was So other than that,
Is there any objection to sending that letter?
and do you want to do any of the others?
The two items could wait. The only other one that might be time sensitive would be the sidewalk, because it will take about a year and a half to continue those discussions. And I'm just asking if council is okay with me looking at Main Street from 1st to 7th and continuing to develop those discussions with those partners and bringing back a more solid plan. I just want to make sure you're okay with me continuing to have those discussions.
Definitely, it's consensus. Is that all right?
Development can wait.
Question
Councilor
on that one. When you're speaking of Main Street, I do own a property on Main Street, so I should probably abstain from discussion on that one.
The good news is, Councilor Maher, we're talking about the other side of Main Street from 1st to 7th, so you can stay
Just wanted to
involved.
clarify. Yeah.
You're good.
Is there, I mean, on this other one with economic development, I mean, are there a lot of questions about this, about looking at various options and considering it? But I'm asking a question.
What?
If you want to consider talking
Oh,
about this
do we want to
tonight.
talk about this tonight or wait? On the economic development, you guys about, we've got a half hour left before we are mandated by ordinance to quit, so.
We have 3 hours.
No, 9:30. So do you want to discuss this a little bit now, or do you want to wait?
I'm fine discussing now.
I'd rather do it.
Okay. Let's go. And Shannon, what's your?
So I've outlined the 4 options that we have in conversation with Sedgwick. And I have spoken to the CBA about their interest in pursuing number 2. And I will say that it was a very initial discussion with the CBA with the caveat that if the city and the CBA chose to pursue that option, if either organization decided it wasn't working in their best interest, that there'd be no hard feelings if they decided to go the other way and choose another option. So there's the county level committee, which we are already a part of. There's utilizing the existing organization of the CBA and to build upon that more of a Carlton focused economic development. There's developing a new structure with the help of Sedgwick, and then there's community vision process, which the city of Yamhill has done, and I've incorporated another city in here that also used a visioning process, and what came out of it, that would be Astoria, the city of Astoria. Do you have questions about options you'd like me to narrow down and bring back in August? Do you have a preferred option that's just flashing at you that you want me to proceed with?
Well, I'm really intrigued by the community visioning option, because as I had said, it really does tie in, I think, in many ways to the vision of the comprehensive plan and development code. And it's really a good time to engage the community and just taking a really strong look at Carlton, what this community would like to see Carlton become. So that's why I love you before.
I agree with that one. I think that's a good strategy.
Yes, I agree. I mean, obviously, number 1 isn't really, I mean, we feel we don't really see the results of the county committee. You know, we'd like to see something more Carlton community oriented. So, and I do like the idea of working with community members.
So visioning process, am I hearing that? So I will get more information and bring that back to council about what details. Okay. Well, then, congratulations, council.
Okay, are we done? Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a motion to adjourn? You can't make it.
No, I was just clarifying what motion you were asking for.
Is there a adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Comment
Good night,
that
everybody.
the commissioning process in McGill has been, I think, terrific over the last 25 years. They've done it a number of times and in several different ways. But I think the outcome of that has always been very helpful.